President.
The Honourable Steve Whan.
Madam Deputy President, last weekend a couple of hundred delegates came to the Country Labor Conference in Queanbeyan. During the conference we saw an announcement of a $60 million funding commitment to the King's Highway by the Leader of the Opposition and myself and the Shadow Minister for Roads. A $60 million minimum commitment, so that's at least $15 million per year to the King's Highway. This is a critical link for our region. The King's Highway runs from Queanbeyan down to the south coast. It's used very frequently by our local residents, by people who commute into Canberra for work, and also by Queanbeyans heading to the coast on the weekends. So it is a very busy highway, and it is a highway where people need to, first and most importantly, drive carefully. The $60 million commitment is a level of funding, and I do acknowledge the government whip who thinks there should be a toll for Canberrans, and perhaps a gate. Oh no, I didn't say that. But the King's Highway is a critical link, and all jokes aside, it does need a long-term, substantial funding commitment. $15 million a year should be a minimum which is spent on this road over a number of years. Over the last few years, we've seen this government's commitment to the highway inconsistent at best. We've seen, unfortunately, a huge amount of spin relating to funding this highway, and some of it this week in this place and in press releases from the Minister for Roads. The Minister for Roads this week made the false statement that this government was providing record funding for the King's Highway. This year, this government is providing $15.6 million, but it is the highest amount it has made available since it's come to government. Its first 3 years were significantly less. And some people might see it as cynical that we have $15.6 million allocated for the King's Highway this year, but next year only $9.5 million, and the year after that no ongoing commitment. Some people might see that cynical, and I suspect they might be right. The Labor Party believes that we need a consistent allocation, as we saw in the lead up to this 2011 election over 4 years. Because in fact the record funding so far in a single year from the state government for the King's Highway is $17.5 million in 2008-09 from the previous Labor government. The record amount of funding spent in a single year on the highway was the combined totals of funding from 3 levels of Labor governments, ACT, Commonwealth and New South Wales, when the Commonwealth and the ACT chipped in $26.3 million in 2007-08. Out of that, we've seen significant improvements to the road. We saw, while I was the local member, 7 new overtaking lanes built on the King's Highway in the area between Queanbeyan and the Clyde Mountain. This government is just starting its first overtaking lane on the King's Highway. It's simply not good enough. We saw a significant widening of the road and improvement to areas, but there is a lot still to do, and particularly the area between Mongalo River and the Clyde Mountain, which has a 90km/h speed limit and does need to be widened and improved. We need additional overtaking lanes, but most importantly, we need a consistent commitment. It is incredibly disappointing for the people of our region that in response to Labor's commitment of at least $60 million in funding, not a massive, unaffordable increase, but a realistic amount of $15 million a year to the King's Highway, instead of responding to that with a guarantee to match that, this government has instead come out and said that the $20 million it's allocated is enough. Local residents simply would not agree that the $20 million allocated by this government over several years is enough to improve this highway. It needs a lot more, and it is embarrassing for government members to come out and claim a positive record on that when their record says very clearly 1 overtaking lane just started, not even finished, 7 overtaking lanes built in the Monero stretch of the King's Highway while I was the local member. Country Labor Conference welcomed that announcement, and it also discussed a number of other very important things, including our concerns about the $7 GP tax and impacts on regional hospitals, the Commonwealth Government's lack of commitment to the NBN, and very importantly, the Country Labor Conference also brought a couple of hundred hungry and thirsty guests to Queanbeyan who stayed in our local hotels, who produced a very big night for the Royal Hotel on Saturday night and for other places around the area, and produced a significant economic boost for the region. And also, while they were on Walsh's Hotel on Friday night, by the way, and also while they were there, door knocked a couple of hundred houses to assist our campaign.
The right went to Walsh's and the left went to